Bricks and Minifigs is your one-stop shop for all things LEGO. Hit the link below to find a store near you. Hey everyone, Joshua Hanlon here at BrickFair Virginia 2023, and I'm in the middle of the Great Ball Contraption layout. I'm joined by the theme coordinator here, so if you want to introduce yourself, and then we'll take a look at what we've got.
Sure, I'm Scott Anderson. I'm the theme coordinator for the Great Ball Contraption for this year, and this is what we have. So we basically start out here. We have a nice tower drop, which leads into a pneumatic pump module. This one's kind of unique because it's all run on air. So as the air kind of like cycles through, it initiates the lift onto the next module. So it's kind of a unique type of thing. This one here, it's like bothering with this in my mouth, but this one's just like an Archimedes screw, and it just lifts the balls up through and onto the next one. This one I think is a semi-pump, but it's also run off of a NXT motor. So he's done a converter to convert from regular power to the NXT. And this here, nothing more than a regular ball lift. And we go on into here with also kind of a lifter. This uses more of the banana, the banana gears. It lifts it from one to the other. And then they got a real high-speed spinner next. So the balls drop in, and the high-speed spinner accelerates the ball to move it on to the next.
That looks dangerous.
Yes. It's got, if you notice, it's got a cage over the top to keep the balls from propelling outside of the module. Keeps it contained. And then we'll go on to this by one of the normal chain lifts that we've seen probably time and time again. A lot of people have different iterations of the same type of modules from year to year and have their own perspective and do it a little bit different. That's what I really like about a lot of these modules is folks will take something that someone has already come up with for a design, and they'll kind of tweak it and come up with something that's unique to them, either with color coding or different style bricks. This one's a nice blue and yellow. Reminds me kind of like a Swedish flag. So then you have normal pushers, and you run into sometimes some of the other brick conventions. They have modules, workshops. So a lot of people gravitate to these workshop modules as good starter packs to get an idea on how to do a GBC. So, and these are like a steppers, similar probably from like a GBC workshop. And this one's really unique though, because this one works off of the pneumatics. So it's all air fed. So the motor goes through and charges the pumps, air pumps, and then it moves all the way through, triggers your lifts. So it's rather unique. I guess Nate, the creator of this one, he said he's had it for the last 3 or 4 years. It's been working flawlessly all that time. So no actual real motors in the gearing. It's just all pumped with air. This here is a ball pump. What it does is the balls come rolling in, and it needs one ball to push the next ball up. So it takes quite a few balls to charge the pump. And if it looks like it stalls and nothing's coming out because it's waiting for another ball to come in to feed it and push the next ball up. So he actually has a recycle, so if things miss the shooter, it'll come down here and go back around again, which is very useful because otherwise you have balls that pool up and create a jam. So it's a very good way to keep things flowing without slowing down the process. This is a unique little lifter and a pumper. I think this one rolls for the exit, the output. So it feeds into like a custom made, I think it's supposed to be an R2-D2. I think it's been a show either here and some other shows before, but it's a unique concept of creating like a static display using actually a rather generic type of module, but then you add some bling to it, if you could say bling, and make it look a little bit different. This is like a small little ball shooter. It'll get down and drop, and you see inside there's a mechanism, and I think Tom Atkinson had with the perpetual
Prototype.
Uses a ball shooter, and I think a lot of people have taken Tom's concepts and ideas and have kind of tweaked it to make it their own. So this is basically a ball shooter of that type. And then we go in here, which is another ball pump. And with the ball pumps, like I explained before, it takes one ball to initiate continued feed. This one here's a unique, it's like a ball sweeper. It picks the balls up and cups it. When it gets up, the gravity obviously makes it fall off to the side. So that's fun to watch, something different. And then this regular ball, and this is like I guess a wheel, because they have like different Archimedes screws sometimes which propel the ball upward.
We have a little repair happening right now.
But yeah, this just basically lifts the balls up, and the special design on the little cups sometimes. And you can do it with a lot of different things, different axles, different other things to lift it up.
Is that yours?
Drop it off onto the next modules. So I think we had a little bit of ball overload, which occasionally happens in GBC. It's amazing that something that's round can actually get stuck. You think round objects will always roll, but friction with a lot of round objects will create a jam sometimes, which is kind of a unique phenomenon if you think about it. And then we move on to another standard stepper. And this is like, I think, a unique kind of takeoff of one of Philo's, out of the Netherlands, where he had, I think it was like the jigsaw. So this one uses only one leg as a jigsaw, where some of the other jigsaws have two different arms that move the ball. This uses just the one. But I think it's rather interesting because it uses the chain gears. So it kind of changes things around. This here's green one is one of the BrickFair modules I think we had 2 years ago or 3 years ago. Quite a few people in the workshops, they buy the kits, and then you'll see a lot of repetitive builds around here from workshop modules. There's a basic ball lift which actually leads into Ian's. Ian wanted to explain this, but he's running the tug of war game right now. But Ian, he created this great big roller coaster. So basically what this does, it lifts it up and the balls will roll through. All the balls are counted. And once it gets a certain amount of balls into the bucket, then it'll actually start to rise the car, and then it'll launch on its own and go down the rails, and just like a roller coaster.
This is a fascinating module. We actually have a more in-depth video on this from a prior BrickFair. So if people want to check that out, they can get a lot more of the details from Ian on kind of how this all came together and how this operates.
Correct. Now he uses a lot of like the older NXT bricks. So he's got a computer program that basically functions and operates this entire contraption, which is rather impressive. A lot of sensors and ball counters, and I'm actually amazed. I remember several years ago when he first designed this and he brought it here, and it's taken quite some time to work. And it's kind of like flawless now. It rolls. Hopefully, I think it's going to launch here pretty soon. You always got to watch the coaster. Anticipation. I think it's watching and dropping balls into it now. Hopefully he'll catch it on video. You never know. Then we go into like regular steppers. This was previous year, I think Stuart Roll had a module that he had designed for one of the GBC workshops, which is a stepper. And this is another basic chain lift with like a zigzag ramp for it to go down. So the coaster just launched, so a lot of balls are, that must be the bypass, so. Now, this is like an interesting one.
Oh, it's going down.
There you go, yeah. Just needed to wait another couple seconds.
John was able to get it.
That's always fun to watch that go around. Now what's nice about this module, we have a young enthusiast. He's only 13 years old, Jude, but he's been looking online, and based on what you see online, he's like developed this yellow and black ball lifter here, and he's taken some of the other previous workshop modules to build. So it's really fun to see a lot of the young talent, you know, being inspired by a lot of the GBCs. And some of them are actually working inside the pit here and helping us out. So this here is another, like, one of Ian's merry-go-rounds. Same gentleman who did the coaster. Which is unique about this is he's got this all geared and in time, so the balls will roll off and in timing fall into the merry-go-round. And when it gets up, the way the arms are angled, when it gets to a certain apex on its circular motion, then it naturally tilts, and that's when the balls will fall off the merry-go-round and continue on the loop. And here we have just a general stepper, and these two here are both previous BrickFair Ball Contraption workshop modules. And then you get some of the steppers, and it's always nice to see some folks where they take and they put some, you know, creativity and their own personal taste on a module. This one obviously is an Arctic polar bear theme, which is always fun to see. And we have a few more workshop modules as well. Now, one of our creators, John Lazar, he's really taken by the Frozen theme. So he took some efforts. A lot of the intricates is basically a ball ramp and uses like a tube. So it basically goes through the tube as the ramp until it comes to the next portion, which lifts the ball on out. Whereas some people on the intake, this is a rather large intake because you got the tube feed. For others, it's a very short intake where it just drops in and goes right to the lifting mechanism. So this one's kind of a longer intake, which is fun to watch. And if you look real close, you know, it's a translucent tube, so you can see the balls actually roll through the tunnel. And I like some of the bling he's put on here with the teddy bears and the little like snowmen, and he's got the snow lion and things. Really a lot of fun. Now this module here, for a gentleman, would you like to maybe say a few things about yours?
Yeah, so often when I bring things to LEGO conventions that aren't GBCs, all the GBC people come and tell me, you know, this should really be a GBC. And about 2 years ago, I had something very similar to this with a T-Rex on it, and all the GBC people were pressuring me all week, so I decided, you know what, I'll make it a GBC. So I've done this concept before, but now we've got balls climbing up the mountain. They ignore all the signs that the bridge is out, fall down the bridge, into the river, down the waterfall. And then the whole reason this entire thing works is at the very end, the filtering mechanism, because the balls are just slightly larger than the minifig heads, so it filters them right out.
Perfect. And I know we had attempted to show this at Brick World Chicago earlier this year. Had a little bit of an issue there, so how's it been running for you?
So in the entirety of the time I've had it run at both shows, I've had one issue once, and that was exactly when you got to me. I was like, I think they're cursed or something. When I, like 10 minutes ago, when I turned around and saw you at the other side of the table, I was like, oh, it's going to break now. That's 100% what's going to happen. It's going to break right now. So yeah, it was a motor and a power issue I was having last time, but I got it all balanced out, so it's all been good.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much. I'm glad it's running for you, and I'm glad you were able to bring it back and continue to show this off.
Yeah, definitely.
Thank you. Keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's just a very unique waterfall. You know, it combines two elements, and then it separates the balls out from the clear translucent head elements, which is really unique. And that balls basically flow from the waterfall into some more of the basic lifts, and you'll run into a series of previous GBC brick modules, workshop modules.
Go around the pillar real quick.
Yeah. And then you get some folks that they're like old school. So they continue to use a lot of the old, brick-shaped Technic elements. Because years ago they used to only have the square bricks with the holes, and then they came out with the newer beams, which are more curved and more shapely, and give things a little bit more roundedness to it for your creations. But so I like to see the old school bricks and elements still being used. Adds a little bit more, unique character to the entire layout. So that'll basically feed into some of our other modules here. And what's unique about this tower here is it came all the way from Australia. So you have one of our creators here to travel all the way from Australia.
That explains the giant spider.
Yes. He brought a little bit of his Australian flair with him. And it's been working very well. And with the spider, it kind of gives that mystique of scariness in my opinion. So, this one's been here before. I had one of our displayers. This was previously by one of our younger builders, way back in 2000, and I think I met the young man in 2011, Zach Pappas. He's off to college now, he's grown up, but one of his friends brought this for him. So one of his friends continued the tradition of this ball shooter. So basically the balls come in, lift up, and go to a shooter, and if you watch, they go real quick around the loop, the half arch here. The balls travel so fast you don't even know they're moving. But this is something I remember Zach years ago when he had his prototype and he worked on it, and the balls will go flying everywhere, but he's worked so hard, and this thing's pretty much flawless now and doesn't lose any balls, and they don't go shooting all over the expo center. So, but it's nice to see what some perseverance and dedication to the craft can do. And it's even nice to see someone else continue it and bring it and display it in his honor. So, and as it moves on, we got a longer ramp. And this is a nice colorful lift because it feeds in, and it's kind of like a spiral type lift. Stepper, which is really unique because it's a spiral, but then it's also a stepper. So as you observe, it passes the ball from one step to the other as it works its way all the way around and up to the top. And it's got a lot of color to it. I think it's a very eye-catching type of display and a mock, which is a lot of fun. Now this one here is a very unique one. Our young esteem here, Connor, this is his creation from a couple years ago. This is basically a clock, but it's gravity fed. He uses weights, counterweights, and he has to reset it every 15 minutes because as the time goes, the weights will drop, and I think it keeps time. And it's supposed to be, ticks back and forth in time with a clock. And he's trying to keep it to the one ball per second standard, and it usually works really well. That was kind of a unique, original creation and design of his. I think he brought it here like a couple years ago, but it's always worked well, and he keeps bringing it back. So,
Sounds good.
yeah. And then we get into a cardan lift. This is another Great Ball Contraption workshop module. But one of our I think is Laurie George. He's out of Australia. He had lived here for a while in the States and attended here at BrickFair.
We have a number of GBC videos with his stuff represented. Fantastic.
Correct, yes. So this is kind of his legacy to BrickFair, that he designed this cardan lift and then became a module for the workshop. So then it moves on to another GBC, and this I think was a recent Brick World convention workshop module. And then go to a ball pump, and I think the ball pumpers for Connor, the same gentleman that did the clock here, this is his new design for this fair is his train. But what's unique about these trains, that all the trains engines are custom built, because Lego usually has train motors that are designed plug and play motors. Well, he's basically designed with an extra large motor, and he's made an entire internal gearbox, which is all custom just for these trains. And
Really cool how when it goes by, the balls drop in over here.
correct. It goes by, it picks up the balls automatically, and it's all mechanical.
Most of the train modules you see require Mindstorms because there's a certain amount of coordination going on. But as Scott said, this is completely mechanical. There's a lever to activate the loader, and there's a lever to activate the unloader. And it's really a remarkable design.
Fantastic work.
Yes. That's another one of our younger creators. So, and then they'll basically come as you watch the train comes by. It just makes a hesitation as it goes by, and it'll lift the arm, and the balls will come out automatic, and they'll jump into the next module. There you go, whoop whoop whoop. It's very satisfying to watch. And then it goes to the ball lift, and then it gets to it. I guess it's kind of like a maze, but the balls will drop in, and this thing will rock back and forth, and the balls will work their way through an entire maze before they move on to the next module, which the gearing and how everything is timed to get it to move back and forth is really, really unique and interesting to watch. And another BrickFair workshop module. Now this one's a new one for the show. With the new Lego Stunts line that they had, where the motorcycles and cars and the stunts theme. One of our enthusiasts, he saw this and said, "Oh, I can make like a ramp and jump out of this stuff." So he basically created this loop effect with a ball shooter, and it rapidly accelerates around it reminds me of a Hot Wheels track.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's so much fun. Kind of like the big arch that we saw earlier where it shoots through.
Correct. So it go around and jumps and up and over into the next module, which is a lot of fun. Then they'll come down and feeds into, this is one of Stuart Roll's creations from several years ago, which is like the water bucket. So if you ever go to like a water park, they always have the water buckets that when they fill up with water, they dump automatically. Well, this is a similar concept. So this actually is based on weight. And you get so many balls in there by the weight that it'll actually tip all on its own. So there's no motors, there's no sensors or anything in it. It's basically just natural laws of gravity. When it gets heavy, top heavy, it tips on its own. So it's very unique. And then we get down to just the regular wheels lift. which then comes to Stuart Roll's train, which uses NXT. And what's interesting about this train is that he uses like the NXT brick on the top, and he has a program based on the colors. So if you look at the side of the track, there's color-coded tiles. And when it hits those color-coded tiles, then that sends the signal to the program to initiate a command. So when it gets there, the red would mean stop. So the thing would stop, and then there's also another color sensor on the lift here that initiates. So he's got an NXT motor that runs that lift. It starts to spin to load the balls. And once it's loaded, it'll automatically go down and off to the next. This is the reservoir where it dumps off and then moves on to the next lifts. A lot of them are basic lifts. I think this is Stuart modified his workshop module to be a little wider or accommodate more balls, but the concept's basically the same for a stepper. This is I think what Stuart calls his wheelie. Now this was only found in one Lego motorcycle set, which has the spacing large enough for a ball to drop in so you could actually go around and lift it. And what's unique about this is because one wheel rolls one way and then the other, so you have alternating wheel rotations in order to lift the ball from a lower elevation to the higher elevation to move it along. Now this one's actually a very, very interesting creation. This I think is called the Cube. It reminds me of like the Cyborg Cube.
Star Trek.
From Star Trek. But this, where the ball comes in, it kind of drop. It has like a small ball pump that works the ball up and then until it drops out the hole. And they're in circular motion. Each one of the levels is angled so it'll actually lift up, 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 up. Or actually, I think it dumps. Yeah, I think it dumps, but it basically goes up or down in order for it to run down the rails and to come out and drop out on the other side. And this is another takeoff of like Tom Atkinson's perpetual lifter. It basically shoots the balls from one to the other. Now this, interesting about this, it uses one of the crowns that's found on a minifigure. And it found out that the crown actually fits and holds the ball. So a lot of people used to use the little reflector cups for like the cars, but those are so hard to find nowadays, the reflective cups. So this is another way to accomplish the same thing using a different Lego element. This is based on an Akiyuki design, which is a picker. So the balls that come down, and the back side it uses a rubber band, and when it comes up, there's in the back side it'll hit a little lever, which will cause the little claw to separate and stretch the rubber band to drop the ball onto the next element, which is a tower. But this is basically a basic chain lift tower. But what's interesting about this is it go down the ramp, and then when you get to the other side, it has a nice little zigzag.
A wonderful sound.
But it'll basically drop down using other lift arms to create the zigzag motion. And now this one's another ball shooter, but as you notice, this has the reflector headlight element, whereas the other one it was using the crown from a minifig. But they both do basically the same thing: catch the ball and hold it long enough to launch it off to the next. Another workshop module. Start seeing a lot of those. This is a wheel lift. Then we get along here to another stepper lift. This here is what they call like uses like axles, like 3 fingers. It just kind of sweeps through and lifts using the wheel axles. Then off to another lift. Now what's unique about this is another one of our young builders, 12-year-old. Now his initial, if you see there's a sensor on the top of this. And on the floor here is a computer monitor. Now his initial thought process was a ball counter. And what's interesting about this creation is that the initial concept is he built this to be a ball counter. He wrote an entire computer script and program on his computer, and he would use the computer monitor, which was supposed to sit over the top of here. He had it up and running, but we were having some problems with it, so we switched it from a ball counter just to a regular lift. But the initial was supposed to be a data factory. That's what it was named. But it's a ball counter that was having some problems. But he's a young builder, 12 years old. He's learning, but he's got some.
It's cool to see builders, especially younger builders, pushing the limits like that for what's possible.
Correct. But that's what's unique about this. It had an initial thought process to be a data using a computer, with a computer monitor. I watched it when it worked initially. It actually had an entire script, and he had some animation for the ball counting accusations for the balls, which was really interesting to watch. He used, I guess, Linux and everything to program the entire script in the program. Then we move along to a couple more GBC workshop modules. And then we go out, work into like, I don't really know what to really call this sometimes, because it's kind of a wheel move or a box mover. Because what's unique about these boxes is all the boxes are hollow in the bottom. So the balls will drop in and they move along, and when they get to the other side there's a hole, so the balls just fall right out. So there's no dumping, but it's kind of like an automated dumper, which I think is a very unique concept. I think this was at Brick World Chicago a couple months ago.
Yep, I think you're right.
And I think that was his inaugural run in Chicago. But he brought it here, and it's still working well. And then we move on to another wheel lift, series of wheel lifts. And then we get to this nice little creation. This is another one of our young builders, 13-year-old. She really likes Friends.
I didn't notice.
So she likes the Friends theme, and her whole idea was she wanted to do a water park. So her and her dad, they sat down and they came up with an idea to create a water park to be a module in the GBC. And this is what you get, and it's been working fantastic the whole day.
I love the bright colors.
Oh, yes. For creativity and theme, very, 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 very good. And then go out into another GBC workshop module. And then these are a couple of my creations here that I have a couple of the designers in Germany that I kind of follow in Europe. What's kind of interesting about this is like a hubless. The track runs on the inside of, if you look on the side, there's a groove. So the track runs on the inside, whereas this other side, like sprockets and other wheels to push the ball. This doesn't have any of that. It just uses the slots in this banana gear to move it along, which I thought was a very unique type of way of moving the chain. And then last year when Lego came out with the lighthouse, I saw that and I spied it and I said, I think I can do something with that. So I went out and I decided to try and make it into a GBC module. So it's basically part of it, the Lego Lighthouse set that I modified. Took some time to have to change the footprint because the set's much larger as a footprint, but I had to shrink the footprint, raise it up, and then create the water flow for moving the balls along. So this is two separate, the lighthouse and the actual mechanism for moving the balls are two separate items.
It all looks fantastic together, though.
Correct. And I couldn't go there, and I said that when you see the water, it'd be interesting to see what's under the water. So I thought I'd make a diorama which kind of went with the lighthouse itself. So you get, you know, the perspective, especially for the young viewers. I threw a few Easter eggs in there. So some of the Easter eggs, I might see SpongeBob and a Little Mermaid. Some of her friends are all in there. I think I got like a mystery creature in the back of some black eyes peering out of a cave. So haven't quite figured out what creature it is, but this is a fisherman just enjoying his leisure day, catching some fish. And it looks like the balls kind of get stacked up, but you know, like any water, you know, things, they move and they roll slowly on the ocean surface. So if you throw a ball out in the real world, it rides the waves. It doesn't like move with the waves, it'll ride up and down with the waves. So I think it closely represents, you know, real life as far as how an object moves on the water. And this goes to another three-wheel lift, which is a design that I thought was rather unique.
The bright green is great.
Bright green, correct. Those only came out like years ago with some of the minor sets. Like Lego creates great elements, and it's always interesting to take those interesting elements that Lego creates and have the, oh, what can I do with that moment? And then create something out of it. So, and then it goes off to another couple of standard lifts from previous workshops. And then into a chain lift, which has a actual articulated arm, so you can move it right, left, and it's great for corners because you can kind of, you know, cut that 90-degree angle on a corner. And all those balls feed into another one of Ian's monorail systems here. Now, a lot of folks, they'll see the balls drop and they don't see any motion. And they say it's broken, it's stuck, it's jammed. And it's like, no, no, no. You have to explain to them that this is time, that it counts the balls, and how many balls it'll actually go into the mine cart before it moves on. And I believe it's, what, 20 balls, Ian? Or
It's programmed for 25, but you can say, okay, ignore the counter, just go now, and it'll go. The remote is helpful for that. That's the one thing. Lego had a remote for the first generation Mindstorms. You don't really have a remote for the future Mindstorms. So every little generation is different. But and then every time I bring the monorail to BrickFair, it's different too. I made an improvement in this one in the software, because in the previous version you might have a problem where a train will go through the station, but then before it has reached the next station, the train behind it will go, because there was previously no concept of whether a train was on its way or not. I redid the whole programming to add that ability, so now the trains are much less likely to crash into each other.
Oh, but is that as much fun, though?
Well, it might be fun for the people watching. It's not so fun to clean up all the balls and all the pieces of monorail train on the table.
Oh, great work. Thank you. So we can take a look at how it dumps them out then?
correct. But what's interesting about this is like the first generation of the programmable bricks that Lego had with the RCX. So it may be old school, but it's still applicable in the modern age. So then the balls will move off into his dumping station there, and then continue on.
The dumping station has been rebuilt in the Futuron color scheme. It is my long-term goal, of course many years long-term, to make this GBC module look as if it was an actual Futuron set. So the station is the Futuron color scheme, the unloader is the Futuron color scheme, and hopefully next year the loader will also be the Futuron color scheme.
Sounds good. Looking forward to it.
And then the balls move on from the dumping station and then move along a couple of more of our basic workshop modules, which you see a lot of workshop modules, but they're actually a great starter for someone who's interested in GBC. So I like seeing them because that means there's more people getting into the fun of GBC. So then the balls come down into a ramp, and they'll move along, and then a few more lifts, more workshop modules. And then it come into another interesting shooter, which was created by one of our younger gentlemen here. Would you want to be in, Captain?
Okay. So this is my super looper, I call it, and it gets fed in through this workshop module, and it uses the pair of wheels to spin around the loop. Usually makes it.
No, that's super fun to watch. That's a really great idea.
Thank you. Yes. It uses some tread that slows it down. Yeah, and then it moves into another workshop module. And then here's my mad scientist lab, as I call it. That's fine. That's fine. And then what is happening here? Usually something's not working here, but yes, here is the balls come in and they go up the elevator and then they turn into ducks.
Okay, so it's a GBC ball to duck transformer.
Yes. Well, after they come out of that, if we can, workshop module. Another workshop module, and here's my double worm screw lift, as I call it. Uses the pair that these are new parts from last year. I put a pair of them, and seems to work pretty well to lift them all up. And those are some of my modules.
Excellent work. Thank you so much. What was your name?
Winston.
Cool. Keep up the good work, Winston.
Thank you.
That's the great thing about GBC is you get these young minds and these young enthusiasts get into the hobby of GBC. And they're so energetic and they just really absorb all of this, and their creativity, as you can see, just like really starts to flush through. Then we move on to a couple more, I guess, regular ball lifts, more workshop modules. And then we have one of our creators here. She's a real big fan of snails. So she designed her entire module to look like a snail. So and it looks like we run into an area where a couple of modules have stopped working. So
this happens sometimes.
Yes, and they're working on this section here, so we'll just scoot along. So one of our other creators here, he likes doing some colorful stuff, as you can tell. Now this is a basic lift, but as you can see, he's done like a circular type of down ramping, which adds a little bit of a different spin, as you can say, on the descent of the balls through the contraption. And then it moves along, and he's actually come up with another interesting tower that he's actually put some lighting on and some translucent windows so you can see the balls go through. Right now it looks like maybe a couple of balls got stuck. Oh, that's probably similar to like a ball pump. But even though it's chain fed on the inside, it needs a few balls to prime it before it starts its lift. And this is actually run by a lot of like the motorcycle chain as opposed to regular gears. So this is kind of a chain lifted contraption. And then they exited to, I don't know what they call that, but it's, if you look, he's got a time so when the balls come down, it looks like they're going to collide, but they somehow miss each other just in time. So he's timed it where they will release their downward trajectory on the slope. But I like the very colorful garden look to it with some butterflies and nice trees. You can see some stray wild animals in there. So, and then it falls into another arm lift. It actually works its way up. And now arm lifts can be similar like a ball pump, but they usually use an axle or some type of lifting mechanism to move it up and then drops into it. So, but now this one is, he had the idea of a castle and he likes the castle theme, the creator. So he created a ball pump mechanism which pumps the balls up underneath the dragon. And then when it reaches the top, then it runs down the ramp off to the next module. This is another one of those where it's always nice to see a different theme or different creation rather than just the standard module with not much flair to it. So it's always nice to see a little bit of added bling to a module. And move on to a series of workshop modules. This one uses the old banana gears in reverse to create the ramp for moving the balls along.
Get some more balls in here.
Yeah. I think that breakdown section is what's causing our delay in the balls. And this one actually uses the different wheels and pass it from one to the next to the next. So it's actually kind of a soothing type of thing to watch. And that takes a lot of timing in order to move it so the arms are in sync to move it from one on to the next. And then off to a regular larger chain lift, and then it drops the balls down into a lifting mechanism. And this uses the banana gears. So it swings back and forth, picks up the balls, and when it picks up the balls, it lifts the other end up to dump the balls. And then when it's going to dump the balls, and that's when it moves them along, which is really interesting to watch. And the balls move into a sweeper. This is a dual-sided sweeper where the balls can go from right to left. And as you can see, the person that's running this station with all their modules, they decided to use the sweeper to create 2 rows so he could fit more of his modules in a smaller space. It uses a series of different, wheel modules and little agitators, spinners. This one has a ball lift. Then onto another ball lift using some of the half curved axle beams to move it along to the wheels and wheels. Another one of those miner's set wheels. And then off to a few lifts. There's like a stepper lift, the all white one here, which is real interesting. I think it's going real fast. The balls kind of like chatter up real quick up the stepper. And then we move back to the other side. There's a few lifts, and then it goes into the old, usually like the bucket lifters. So you empty from one bucket to the next bucket to move the ball along. It's amazing with GBC how many ideas you can come up to move a ball from one thing to the next. I think the possibilities are endless when you start thinking about it. And then this is like based, I think years ago, Akiyuki came up with a cup to cup. So with the cup to cup is to pass the ball from one cup to a cup. Well, the cups, like I explained, can be kind of hard to find sometimes. So some people have come up with different concept. This one is what they call like a square to square, which is usually axles and some bushings and that to create a square, and it moves the balls along similar to a cup to cup. So regular ball lifters, former workshop module. This here be a wheel lift similar to the one we watched previously. Some more chain lift modules and wheel modules and lifters. And the thing with GBC is always up and down. The balls go up, the balls go down. So the way to move the ball along is always up and down, or spinning up and down. Then you get to another ball lifter, and what's unique about this lifter here, this is from Owen, the gentleman with the tower from Australia. He actually has an RCX here, and I think it's got a ball counter. So right now he's up to 6,667 balls for the day so far that have gone through the loop. So he's programmed that to count the balls. There's a sensor as the balls go through the lift. And then it goes through kind of a serpentine angle ramp system. And this is another one of the lifters. Use a chain, but kind of use a box system. So it kind of looks like a box as it moves along and like a conveyor belt. And back moves that onto like another carton lift. Picks the balls up. What I really like about the carton lift is the unique gearing it takes to lift something from lower to higher in a rotational motion of the gears. Because if you look, there's certain gears that stay in one place and everything else moves around that one gear to create the lifting motion, which is rather ingenious way of moving things from low to high. Then you're off to a stepper, and then do another ball pump.
A little Minecraft action.
The Minecraft theme type of ball lifter. I think this is what the Ghast or the Ghost, or I'm not big on the Minecraft.
Somebody in the comments will know. They can tell us what this is.
But I think it's one of the Ghosts, but basically
Ghast.
The Ghast, yeah. Spits the ball out. And then on to another workshop stepper. Now the next module, this is what you call old school. Like I had mentioned previously, this is made with a lot of the old school Technic bricks and Technic engine parts, because there was an older set that I think it was a car with an actual working engine inside the Technic car from like the 1990s. So he's taken a lot of those parts to create this module. So it's a prototype using mostly 1980s Technic elements. And then we're getting almost back to where we started at here. So the ball lifter will basically lift the stepper right into the big old chain, which will lift the balls up, drop them. They run down a nice ramp that spells out GBC. So and at the end, they'll fall off and continue on their journey. That's what's nice about the GBC. You don't know where it starts. You don't know where it ends. It's one continuous loop.
It's beautiful. It's always an incredible layout here. So I really appreciate you taking the time to take us through everything. Do you know how many builders are involved in the whole layout?
This year we had, my understanding, a little over 25 builders to put this together. But I think this has probably been the largest burst of young builders 12 and 13-year-olds that I think I've seen in several years.
Do you know how many modules are on display right now?
Last time I counted was close to 140, but it fluctuates because some break and it might be 2 modules to replace the one that broke. So, but it was about 140.
Well, it's always fantastic, and I think it's very popular with the public as always. I've seen a lot of people, following the balls around. It's always so much fun. So thank you once again for taking us through everything.
It's been my pleasure.